What's going on, everybody? It's your big homie, the armchair operator, and welcome to today's video. Now, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you enjoy today's content, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Become a part of the family. We would love to have you. And if you're coming back to my channel, thank you so much for coming back to the channel. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you also enjoyed today's content. All right, so today we're going to take a look at probably one of the most interesting and some would say anticipated rifle releases of 2025. Today we're going to take a look at the HK MR556 A4, as you see right here. Now, before we get into this, first, a little bit of housekeeping. As always, I am not offering for sale any firearms or accessories on this channel. All of my videos are strictly for informational purposes only. Second thing, I got to give a huge shout out to the team and the crew over at the Bunker Gun Shop. My guys Chris, my guy Frank Bank, the entire Bunker 1 and Bunker 2 team. Thank you so much for this recent pickup and for all the support that you have shown the channel over the years. Now that that's out of the way, let's dive into the MR556 over here. Now, for those of y'all that aren't aware of this, the HK MR556 rifles are the civilian versions of the venerable HK416. And the HK416 has been around for quite some time, and it has a pretty big following in both the civilian and the law enforcement communities. A lot of people hold this rifle in higher regard because, for one, it's believed that this is the rifle that took down bin Laden, but also for the 416's robust construction and reliability, particularly under adverse conditions. Now, as I stated before, the MR556 and actually the MR762 versions of the rifle are the civilian versions of the HK416 and the HK417 respectively. The newest rifle, which is this one right here, the A4 version, is the updated version of the MR556 rifle. And one of the things that HK really took into consideration when designing the new rifle was weight reduction. Now, the original rifle was actually pretty heavy. I think it came in out of the box before you put any accessories on it a little over 8 pounds. For an AR style rifle, that's pretty damn heavy. Now, this particular rifle out of the box comes in at around 7 pounds 11 ounces, and that's without all the accoutrement that you see on this particular rifle as it stands right now. So you can imagine, like, for an AR style rifle, it's still pretty damn heavy, but it's nowhere near as bad as its earlier iterations. All right, so we're going to go through this particular weapon from muzzle to buttstock, as it will, and then I'll talk about how I actually have it configured here. And I'm also going to switch on over to the tabletop, and I'm just going to show like a brief comparison between the MR556 A4 and like a standard AR rifle. And I have my Geisley Super Duty right here, which I'll show you. This is my Geisley Super Duty, also chambered in 5.56, and I'm going to show you some comparisons between the two. The reason for this is that the HK MR series of rifles uses a lot of proprietary parts, and I'm just going to do a partial field strip and just show you the differences in the parts. When we get to that particular portion of the video, I'm going to save that until a little bit later on. So if you want to see that, please feel free to skip ahead to bypass all my rambling. But as far as right now, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the features, what it comes with, and also how it handled, at least initially, on the range. All right, so without further ado, let's talk a little bit more about the features of this particular rifle. All right, let's talk about the feature set of this particular rifle. But the first thing I gotta do, y'all know what I like to do, we got to verify clear first. So as you can see, magazine is empty. I don't know if you can see that, but the chamber is also empty. This weapon is verified clear, and we are filming in a safe and controlled environment. I do not have any live ammunition anywhere in the review space. On to the rifle. So the first major difference between this and a standard AR-15 is that this particular gun is a gas piston operated. So I don't know if you can see it through the handguard right there, but that's actually the op rod for the gas piston system. Don't worry about it. You're going to see that more so when I go on over to the tabletop. But anyway, this is a gas piston AR. The barrel is a cold hammer for 16.5-inch barrel with a 1-in-7 twist rate. 1-in-7 twist rate, that's a pretty decent, actually that's not pretty decent, that's an excellent twist rate for a 223 or 556 caliber rifle, especially if you're talking about something like maybe 62 grain or 77 grain, something like that. The barrel itself is not chrome lined. However, according to HK, the barrel is so robust that it really doesn't need chrome lining at all. And the reason why they didn't incorporate the chrome lining was to maximize the accuracy of this particular barrel. Now, I have not been able to get this on a long distance outdoor range. It is my hope that I am able to do that in the future. However, I would say that the groups that I was able to put down on an indoor range were pretty damn tight. Of course, I know 25-yard indoor range, that's not really saying much, but this rifle is capable of putting some pretty damn accurate groups at distance. And I'm looking forward to being able, I'm looking forward to doing that. And when I do that, trust and believe, I'm gonna bring y'all with me so that way you can experience it just when I do. And anyway, let's see what else. We already talked about the weight. Like I said, even without anything on here, this rifle is pretty substantial in weight. It's about 7 pounds, but it's a lot lighter than its previous generation, the A1. However, as it stands right here, to me, it's not super heavy. I mean, I'm a pretty big dude. I'm like 6'3", 6'3 and a half, about 300 pounds. I do push-ups and lift weights every day. But even for a guy like me, holding this thing up, you'll feel it after a while. And it's noticeably heavier than my Geisley over there. But anyway, let's see. All right, so let's move on further down. We have integrated QD points inside the handguard. As you can see, I think that's really dope. The rail panels and everything like that, the M-LOK cover panels, I'm sorry, I added that. These are the Slate Back Industries panels here. I got 3 of them. I have a panel on the 6 o'clock, the 3 o'clock, and 9 o'clock position. I'm rocking the Stream Light, the ProTac light with the pressure pad on the top there. One of the other noticeable features about this handguard, this handguard is actually QD for all intents and purposes. Now, it doesn't have the actual QD lever latch that you would see on the 416, but they do have this great big old bolt here, and all you really got to do is loosen that. Now, one thing to know is that this bolt is captive, so if you get something like this and you want to take the handguard off and you take the bolt off, don't try to remove the thing because you'll mess around and break the spring that's holding this bolt in the handguard. But you would just undo that and the handguard will slide right off. Now, speaking of the handguard, another thing that I like, it's keyed. So you see that right there? That's just to give it just a little bit of extra rigidity and lockup when you made it to the upper receiver. Some of the lower cost handguards and upper receivers don't have that notch. And one of the things that I've experienced in my time is the handguard just kind of twisting on the barrel nut. That irks the living hell out of me. And of course, you don't want that if you want to maintain, you know, your zero. Like if you're running like lasers and stuff like that, or, you know what I mean, you don't want anything messing up your zero. And you certainly don't want your handguard twisting while you're trying to use the darn rifle, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, speaking of, oh, by the way, the gas system. So the gas system is adjustable. They give you a 2-position regulator right here. Not sure if you can see that. You have a normal and a suppressed setting, and it also has some set screws so that you can further fine-tune the gas system on this rifle. I don't have a can to put on this rifle yet. One will be coming before the end of this year. I can promise you that. I'm not sure which can I'm going to go with. I'd like to get a Surefire can, to be perfectly honest. However, I may go the Huxworks route because at this point, I kind of would prefer running a flow-through can, but we shall see about that. Anyway, speaking of the muzzle device, you got a standard A2 bird cage up there, more than sufficient if you just plan on running the rifle as is. And let's move further back. So Of course, it doesn't come with sights out of the box. I have some, I believe, second generation flip up M-bus sights just kind of as a backup. My main sighting setup is right here. This is a Trijicon fixed 4 power 4x32 ACOG up here. And I really wanted to put my ACOG on this because I really wanted to give it that GI military style look. You know what I mean? A lot of our soldiers in the armed forces have been running ACOGs on top of their rifles for years, so I just wanted to kind of replicate that look. However, now speaking of that, this particular ACOG does not have the bosses on the side to mount the red dot on the top, but as you can see, I got a red dot on the top here. So I was actually able to find the Trijicon mount for Trijicon foot pair red dots. Shout out to Optics Planet for that one. For the one that was compatible with the ACOGs without the bosses. And the way you are supposed to set this thing up, first of all, bit of a side note, I caught hell trying to get this damn thing mounted on this. It's not hard. It's really just a press fit. The instructions are good, but one thing it didn't tell me was that I was going to have to like try to press fit this thing once I got it lined up in place, but I eventually figured that out. But once you get it on there and you get it torqued down correctly with the screws and everything, this is rock solid, man. It is not going anywhere. Now, I did have a bit of a boo-boo. I over torqued the screw on that, so I don't know if you can see that, but that's why that joker's a little brokey right there. But I ain't worried about it. It's not going to come off, and I don't intend for it to come off anyway. But right now we got the Sealy Wolf 2 up here, and it's really just a placeholder. I am on the lookout for a decent price Trijicon RMR because I really want a full Trijicon setup on here. So I got my guy Frank looking out for me for a good used RMR, so I know he got me, so I ain't worried about that. But at least for the purposes of right now, the Sealy T3 is up. The Sealy Wolf 2, I'm sorry, the Wolf 2 is up here, and this is a great dot. I don't have any issues out of this dot at all. And personally, when it comes to my sighting setup, I know I could get like a 45-degree offset, but I kind of prefer this because if I'm actually looking at distance, I could come down here with it just like a normal, normally sight my optic. And if I got to peek my head up at something that's within 100 yards or something like that, I got my red dot and all I got to do is lift my head up. And I prefer that because you have better situational awareness. You can see your surroundings a lot better when you have your head up versus your chin all the way down here onto your stock. You know what I mean? It's just easier for you to see your surroundings. And I also had this ACOG mounted on a LaRue Tactical QD setup with a Cram 9.0 spacer. So if I need to take this dot off for whatever reason, there you go. See, for whatever reason, I can take it off at any point in time, and I don't really have to worry about it disturbing my zero, just so long as I put it back in the spot that I took it out. So that's really cool. Now, one of the things that I also like about the MR556 A4 is that it is a fully ambi lower. Now, I think that's really cool. So you got your, of course, you got your mag release over here. We also have like a bolt catch, bolt release right here on the side too. And of course we got the corresponding controls on the other side. So for those of you who really are in the fully ambi lowers, this might be something you might want to look into. You see I got the bolt locked back and boom, it's down, and plus you can go to reverse, just push that guy up and you're good to go. One of the things that I've noticed is that the charging handle on this is noticeably stiffer than that of, say, a standard DI rifle. And I think that that's basically the fact that you got to kind of fight two springs with this particular rifle. The spring for the op rod, for the gas piston, and also the spring inside of the buffer tube. But that's not a big deal. It's just something that I noticed when I first picked this particular rifle up. Of course, you got your ambi 45-degree safety here. It's a polymer safety. I like this safety because a lot of times when it comes to ambi AR safeties, This side tends to dig into my finger a little bit, but I don't really have that issue with this particular rifle. For the way they design the safety, it gets you that positive click on and off. And the other thing that I've noticed is that a lot of these controls have built-in shelves. So you have a shelf right here. And you also have a great big old shelf for the bolt catch on this side, as well as the magazine release on this side. And all of that is just basically there to prevent accidental manipulation of the controls. Like if you got it slung or something like that, you get out of the vehicle, whatever it is that you need to do, that's why that's there. Let's see, moving right along from there, we have the elongated castle nut, and it is staked. I don't know if you can see that right there, but it is. The castle nut is longer, I guess, to increase the rigidity of the castle nut. So that's the reason why they did that. You also have a QD end plate right here. Not sure if you can see that, but that's the QD receiver there. And of course, you got I already talked about the QD receivers up here. And you have your 6-position buttstock. Now on the older MR556 A4s, they had a thicker stock. They had a more pronounced cheek riser. Now they eliminated that on this particular rifle and give you the slimline stock, basically to save on the weight. And personally, I see why they did that, but I like a good cheek guard. So I'm not sure. I might go and get the actual HK stock with the cheek guard on this. I'm not 100% sure. I might do that. But another thing about the buffer tube, it does have the drain holes in the back of the buffer tube. So if whatever reason your rifle gets submerged and you pick it up out of the water, it has somewhere to drain out of the buffer tube. So that way you don't have a buffer tube full of water when you go to shoot your rifle. Now, as you can see, I have a Magpul K2 XL grip on here. Now, it comes with a HK. Let me get the actual grip that it comes with. Let me get that out. I was going to save that, but for when I talked about the range bag, which I'll get to it in a bit, but I just want to show y'all that real quick. So stand by. So here's the grip that the rifle comes with. It's very HK VP9-ish. You got a nice beaver tail up here, nice wide grip. It's not, you know what I mean, it got that hole in there. There's no compartment, storage compartment, anything like that, and it has decent enough texture. Now let me just say that I actually do like this grip. I don't have an issue with this particular grip. It's actually pretty good. But the reason why I put a Magpul K2 XL grip on this particular rifle is just the fact that I am more partial to that grip. I really like the Magpul K2 XL grips. I try to run them as much as I can. They really fill out my hands. They're very positive. And I don't know, the grip is your interface to the weapon. So I just prefer it. So that's why I just put it on there. That's not to say that this is bad or anything. I just like this one better. And let's see what else we got. It comes with I believe a 3rd generation standard capacity P mag. It comes with that, and of course I added the Picatinny rail sections and this Magpul vertical grip. But speaking about stuff that it comes with, let's take a look at the bag. So it comes in this very nice rifle length HK range bag, as you can see here. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with this range bag. And let's see what else we got. We got our instructions manual here. I always recommend taking a look at the instruction manual of any firearm that you get at least once. I have a habit of just picking it up and just thumbing through it and just looking at certain things. Granted, I'm very familiar with the AR platform, but still, I like stuff like this, so that's cool. Let's see what else we got. We also have some accoutrements in here. We have some other I guess we call this nylon whatever's for inside the rifle case. I guess if you want to store magazines and other stuff, they give you 1, 2, and I think they give you 3 of them, different sizes. This is a 9-inch, and that's the screw that originally held the grip to the lower receiver of the rifle. I just put it in there so that way I wouldn't lose it. But you get 3 of these, and of course your customary gun lock because of safety. I mean, listen, I get it. Safety is important, but if you're able to buy something like an HK MR556, put that damn thing in the safe. Let's just stop playing around. Let's just stop playing games. Throw it in the safe and call it a day. That's just my opinion. Anyway, moving on from there, and one of the last things that you get that I think is also really cool is they give you this nice tool. So big ups to HK for that. I like tools. I don't really need it, but hey, I like it. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would need it, and why not have something that's nice and compact that you can use with your rifle and take it with you on the field. So that's basically it for everything that it comes with, and of course it already comes with the PMag. So when it comes to the shooting performance of the MR556 here, it's a phenomenal shooting gun. It is accurate. It's actually a very clean running rifle, and that's one of the advantages of running a gas piston style rifle, especially a gas piston AR. Now with a standard DI gun, the direct impingement ARs like my Geisley and my Daniel Defense and other standard AR-15s, is that gas blowback is sent back into the action of the firearm, because that's the gas. That gas is used to actually cycle the bolt carrier group. Whereas with a gas piston gun like the MR762, your gas system is basically up here. So think of it this way. You know how you have your gas rings inside of your bolt carrier group in a standard AR, where your gas rings in like a piston gun, and this piston gun in particular, are up here in the gas piston. So all of that is taking place right here, and what happens is the gas is forcing this op rod back, and the op rod is physically pushing against the bolt carrier group to cycle the action of the firearm. That being said, this particular rifle is not going to foul up as much inside the bolt carrier group area as a standard DI gun, which is actually really good, and especially if you're running suppressed, and also if you're running in more austere environments like sandy environments and things like that. So the good thing about it is you don't have to clean your rifle as much as that of a traditional DI setup, but there are some pros and there are some cons to that as well. So with that being said, let's go on over to the tabletop, because I want to show you some of the differences between, say, the MR556 A4 here and a standard DI gun. There's a lot of proprietary components in the HK rifle. So let's go on over to the tabletop and let's do a more in-depth comparison. If this is it for you all, at this point, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will be doing a 1,000-round follow-up review of this rifle coming at some point in the future. But for the rest of you, let's head on over to the tabletop and let's dive into the nitty-gritty as the differences between these two rifles. Welcome to the review space. I have the upper receivers for both the Geisley and the MR556 A4 down here on the table. No need to verify clearance since these firearms have been partially disassembled. And once again, YouTube, this is just for information and educational purposes only, okay? We're not going to be modifying these components in any way, shape, or form. I'm just going to be talking about the differences between the two, okay? Now, getting back to the conversation about the features of the MR556 A4 here, I want to show you the bolt carrier group. Now this is the bolt carrier group that comes in the HK rifle here, and as you can see, it looks quite a bit different from your standard bolt carrier group that you would see in most of your DI style AR-15s, just from a visual aesthetic. But let me just talk about the key differences between these two bolt carriers for those who may not be aware. So in a traditional DI setup, the gases are going to enter this particular part of the bolt carrier group right here. And your gas rings are actually inside of, well, actually in the bolt here. If I were to remove it, which I'm not going to do right now, but if I were to remove it, you would see a series of rings on here. And so the whole point of those rings is to regulate those gases, so that way as the action is cycling, the gases will send the bolt carrier rearward after it fires the cartridge. It drives back, the buffer tube springs it back forward again, chambering the next shot, and then rinse and repeat, right? Well, this particular bolt carrier doesn't have a gas system here. It has basically, like, I forget exactly what you call this face, but as you can see, it's relatively flat, but it has like a little cup here where the op rod, let me get it in the camera. See, it has a little divot like right there in the middle. That's basically where the op rod hits, and it physically pushes the bolt carrier back, cycling the action of the firearm. Also, another thing that you notice, and I'm sure my eagle-eye viewers would have noticed, is the actual key itself. Now, this is not a standard key that you would see in most ARs. This is Geisley's own proprietary, but most of your ARs, this key has rounded edges up here on the side. Whereas with the MR556 right here, it's squared off. Not sure if there's much of a benefit there, but that's just a difference between these two particular ones, as you can see there. Pretty much standard AR style 15 style bolt head itself for the most part. As you can see basically there, where you have your extractor claw and your ejector spring, pretty much there. The lugs and the surfaces are very similar. Now, one thing of note here, so this particular rifle, the HK, is drop safe, and you see the drop safety right here. So the thing of it is, the actual hammer in the lower receiver in the HK rifles, and I'll get into more of that when I talk about the lower receiver portion, it has to be a little bit taller. The reason being, it has to defeat this angled piece of metal right here, which is the drop safety. And this drop safety will prevent the firing pin from traveling forward. If the weapon is dropped or jostled real hard, you're not going to have that issue. Whereas on a standard AR-15 bolt carrier group, you don't really have that. That's the back of the firing pin right there. So strictly speaking, it is not drop safe, but that's why this particular component is here. Another key difference, and I'm going to turn it over to the underside for this. So this particular bolt carrier, the bolt carrier on the Geisley is known as a full auto bolt carrier group. Now, even though the rifle itself is not fully automatic, this extra bit of material here at the bottom of the bolt carrier would make it so that if for whatever reason one day our rights were restored and we could own fully automatic firearms free of the NFA and ridiculous tax restrictions and so on and so forth, the idea is you can drop this bolt carrier group into a full auto lower and use it in that particular lower receiver. The other reason, the main reason I think why a lot of people like this extra material basically just adds a little bit more rigidity to the bolt carrier itself. Whereas a pure semi-automatic bolt carrier, I believe the material stops at about right here. So there's more negative space here in this particular area of the bolt carrier group. Now, enter in the MR556 A4 here. Now, if you look at the two, this rear section is just a little bit shorter on the HK versus a standard full auto bolt carrier. I'm not sure if that's to comply with the European standard or the US standard. I'm not 100% sure about that. But the point of the matter is, let's say if you were one of the lucky ones and had an actual HK 416, the Select Fire 416, putting this bolt carrier in that particular firearm, you're not going to have a fully automatic firearm at that point, because the bolt carrier is designed specifically just to be semi-automatic. So if you were thinking about doing that, sorry to crush your dreams, but with this bolt carrier, that ain't happening. All right. Now, one thing I also want to note, and I'm going to try my best to show it on the camera. The actual barrel throat itself in the MR556 is just a little bit different. So to go over that, let me pull the bolt carrier up real quick. So you see this little negative cutout right here? So this is just another addition that they put into the MR556 so that you wouldn't be able to use a full auto bolt carrier group in your upper receiver here. So there's a corresponding cutout, and I'm going to try my best to show it on the camera. It might be a little bit difficult, but there's a corresponding cutout inside of the chamber here. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if you can, no, my fingers are kind of in the way, but it's kind of like right there. Not sure if the camera is picking that up. Oh, you see that? Right here, I'm sorry. It's right next to the locking lugs in the barrel extension. But again, that's another feature that they added so that way, even if some way, somehow, you were to be able to try to do that, you couldn't do that with this particular upper receiver or this bolt carrier group. That said, this bolt carrier is proprietary to this style of rifle. You can't just drop in any other style of bolt carrier group in this particular rifle and expect it to work. It's just not going to happen. So that's basically it for the bolt carrier group. I think I pretty much covered most. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm not finished here. So another I think is a good feature about the bolt carrier for the MR556 is that the pin for the firing pin is actually captive. So unlike a standard AR-15 style bolt carrier where you have like that cotter pin right here, I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's a cotter pin there that if you want to remove the firing pin, like if you want to change it or clean or anything like that, let me see, right there, that's that little cotter pin. You would have to take out the cotter pin in order to get the firing pin out, and of course to take the bolt face out and so on and so forth. And that basically is fine for most people. I mean, it's fine for me, you know what I mean? But if you're out there in the field, and let's say you have low light or no light, and for whatever reason you had to just field strip it, God forbid you lose that retaining pin because you'll be SOL. But on this particular rifle, the pin, as you can see right here, is captive. So you would just push that guy out and it will stay captive in the bolt carrier, and you can just remove the firing pin. Now another thing, I don't know if you can see that in there in that little cutout, but that's the spring. This firing pin also has a spring, and I believe that's also part of the drop safety mechanism for this particular rifle, so that the firing pin doesn't travel forward under inertia if for whatever reason the rifle was dropped or jostled really hard. So that's for the most part the extent of it, outside of the actual gas systems itself, as far as the differences between the upper receivers. Just for fun, these are the charging handles between the two rifles. They're both ambi charging handles. You got the standard, you got the Geisley airborne charging handle, which I think is really dope. And you also got this charging handle. This is HK's charging handle. You got these two great big old buttons on the side here that really makes manipulating this charging handle very easy to do. Though some people may not particularly care for the fact that you have these handles are so large, they might get snagged on gear if you have the rifle slung over your shoulder, whatever the case may be. But for my purposes, hell, they're more than adequate for me. But anywho, that's enough about the upper receivers. Let's talk about the lower receivers. All right, now we got the lower receivers for each firearm down here on the table. We just talked about the upper receivers, but I just wanted to show you the differences between the two lower receivers. So as you can see with the guys, we have your standard length castle nut right here. This castle nut is staked, right? And we have the HK style castle nut, which is also staked, but is considerably longer. Even so, the buffer tubes on both of these rifles are about the same length. It's just the castle nut is just longer on this one versus this one. Now, let's take a look at I think the main difference, the hammer. So let's release the hammer, okay? We got the hammer up on that guy, and let's do the same thing with the Geisley here. Boom, the hammer is up. So as you can see, the differences between the two are noticeable. You see how the HK hammer is a little taller than that of the Geisley. It's taller because it has to defeat that drop safety on the bolt carrier group, whereas the Geisley is just a standard AR style hammer that we all know and familiar with. Now, the main thing to remember about that is simply this: trigger compatibility. You know, drop-in triggers and things like that, you're going to have to be very cautious if you're looking to change the trigger route on one of these HK Pattern rifles, because the hammer is noticeably different. So you can't just drop in, say, your standard Geisley trigger or Hyperfire or Rise Armor, whatever the case may be, and expect it to work, because this hammer is noticeably different. Now, the trigger pull weight on this particular rifle is somewhere around, I think it's like in the 3.5 pound range to 4 pound range. It was a little stiffer when I got it, but it is certainly better than a mil-spec AR trigger. And hell, even then, a mil-spec AR trigger is still actually pretty good. But just keep in mind, if you have one of these rifles and if you're thinking about upgrading the trigger, you want to take in consideration that hammer. So definitely make sure to source trigger packs or trigger components that are compatible with HK style rifles. I haven't done any research, so I am not sure if they are out there, but I would imagine they are, but I can't prove that in court, so don't quote me on that. But just do your research before you start monkeying around with trigger components and start spending money on things, because you don't want to spend money on a trigger, try to put it in here, next thing you know, your rifle doesn't work. So you've been warned. And let's see, what else? Let's look in here. So this is another difference between, I don't know if the camera, let me see if I'm gonna try to show it here. So inside of the lower receiver for the HK, we have this bar here, and I believe that bar is just so that it adds a little extra rigidity for the trigger components, because of the fact that this gun is basically designed to run suppressed. All that extra back pressure could force the hammer to slam down on the trigger components with a little bit more greater force while the weapon is being utilized. So I think they put that bar there to just kind of protect the internal components. Whereas on the Geisley here, of course, you just see just standard Geisley trigger components, like you don't see that particular bar. I don't know if this trigger pack would function without it. I mean, I'm not going to remove it to try it, but I just thought that it's pretty interesting that they added that in there just to give it just a little bit more strength. And that's kind of the thing that I've noticed with the MR556 rifle, is the fact that the damn thing seems like it's overbuilt on purpose. I mean, it's designed to be very durable, to last, hell, basically the lifetime of the youth shooter. One of these rifles can easily be passed down to, you know, your children, your grandchildren, whatever the case may be. If it's properly maintained and taken care of, this thing will probably outlive most of the people who are watching this damn video. So I think it's really dope. But anyway, that's basically, I'm just going to end this particular portion of the video. Let me give you my final thoughts as far as my experience with this particular rifle so far. And we're back. So one thing I forgot regarding the takedown of the MR556. So the earlier generations of the MR556 rifles, you needed a tool, just putting the magazine in back for aesthetics. So you needed a tool to use to push in the takedown pins on the rifle in order to field strip it. With this generation, you don't need to do that. These are just standard push pins that you will see on any AR-15 style rifle. So I just wanted to cover that before I close things out. Now, my final thoughts, my initial final thoughts, if that makes any sense, of this rifle is very positive. I kind of liken this to being more so like the the BMW of the rifle world, so to speak. It gives you a lot of features like right out of the box that a lot of rifles don't give you. It is built like a tank. This is a rifle that could probably outlast most of its owners. It is something that if you take care of it, it will certainly take care of you. Now, here's the thing about this particular rifle though. The cost of entry is pretty damn steep. I mean, this rifle, the MSRP for this rifle is somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like $3,800. I mean, it's and the 7.62 version is around 4,000 or maybe 4,200, 4,299, somewhere like that. Now, the street price will vary depending on where you find this rifle, but the point of the matter is this thing is not cheap at all, and I had to liquidate quite a few pieces in my collection in order to bring that cost down to afford this. So I don't want you to think that getting into one of these is going to be a cheap proposition by any stretch of the imagination, but I do believe that it is a worthwhile investment. If you need to buy one rifle and if you can afford the cost of entry, I think that what this can give to you in terms of performance and feature set, I don't think that you'll be disappointed. Now, here's one thing that I've always been curious when it comes to, you know, the so-called higher end AR style rifles cost wise versus something that's a little bit on the lower end. Like take this Geisley here. Now, this Geisley is not a cheap rifle itself. This is a $2,200 rifle. And you do get a lot of good features in this rifle. I mean, you get excellent handguards, you get reliability, you get I believe this is a cold hammer forged chrome line barrel. I believe, I'm not 100%, honestly, I don't remember, but I believe it is. You get a surefire flash hider that can act as a QD for a surefire suppressor. I mean, you get QD points here. Like, you get a lot for this rifle. But one of the criticisms for Geisley rifles and some of the other rifles is that it doesn't have a fully ambi lower receiver. Now, me personally, having a fully ambi lower receiver is more so something extra. I don't necessarily require it, me personally, but then again, I'm a right-handed shooter. For a left-handed shooter, an ambi lower receiver might be a bit more of an attractive option for you, so that way you can, you can manipulate the controls a little bit easier, being as though that you're a lefty. Some people just like to have it because they want to have the versatility, being able to switch back and forth, which is cool, you know what I'm saying? But for about just under 4 racks, the MR556 A4 does give you that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend that kind of money to get into a fully ambi rifle here. So, I mean, this rifle is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like $1,800 more expensive than the Geisley. Do I think that you're getting $1,800 more performance for this over, say, the Geisley? To be perfectly honest, it's a little bit difficult for me to answer that question, but what I will say is this rifle does cost a lot more than the Geisley, but at the same time, for the features that you get out of this thing, I'm not mad at it though. I can see why this rifle costs more than that one, just from the construction, the componentry, the accuracy, and the barrel. I mean, I see why it costs more than that, but I mean, I don't know. Like I said, that's a very interesting conversation, and we're going to save that for another day because I think it's a very worthwhile conversation to have. I don't think you need to spend $4,000 to get a quality AR. Don't get it twisted. However, if you do decide to invest in this, I do not think that you'll be disappointed. But anyway, I'm going to end it there. What are your thoughts on the HK MR556? Let me know down in the comment section, y'all. Let's get this discussion popping. You know how we like to do. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. This is your big homie, the Armchair Operator, and I'm signing out, y'all. Peace.